back for our first proper podcast of the year.
That's not because the others aren't proper?
No, but it's because that first one's the BBC
doodah
thing, so we're back. We've only got 5 albums this time round, but what 5 albums they are, or not, depending on your point of view. We have the new Adamant album, which is another comeback, as somebody on Twitter told us just this afternoon.
He has a career of comebacks, apparently.
We have an album by a band called Villagers.
Yep.
Album by a gentleman called Matthew E. White. We have the latest album from Joy Formidable, or Formidable.
Formidable, I've been calling them.
Yeah. And finally, the Dutch Uncles.
Yes.
So, without further ado, as they say in the business, let's get started with Mr. Ant. And as I was saying, most people are probably most familiar with him from his And the Ants days, late 70s, early 80s. He made 3 albums, I think, with the Ants, and then decided to do his own solo thing and released a few albums before disappearing off.
He really did vanish off the face of the earth.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of almost started to go a bit downhill from kind of Live Aid kind of thing when he basically played his single. He was told he could only play one song and decided to play Viva la Rock, I seem to remember.
George Michael, take note.
Yeah.
Too late.
Exactly. So he did that, and then he came back, I think, kind of early 90s with Room at the Top.
Yeah, I remember.
Which was actually quite a decent song. And but then again, seemed to disappear for a few more years. And then I think his last proper album before this one, I think, was as far back as 95.
Yep. I remember the mid-90s sort of surfacing.
And obviously, the time in between, he's been doing various things, including going slightly barking.
Well,
partly due to the fact that he does have bipolar disorder and various other things. So he's had his issues, but in the last few years he seemed to have got back to doing what he wanted to do, and which is playing music. And so we have Adamant is the Blueblack Hussar in Marrying the Gunner's Daughter. Just rolls off the tongue, that one, doesn't it? And it's essentially a double album as well. If it was back in the vinyl days, it's 17 tracks, and it's
huge.
Yeah, it's not a short record.
No.
So, what of it?
Well, it would be cliche of me to say in every double album collection there's probably a good single album crying to get out. So I'm going to say it. The cliche is true in this case. I think there's a lot of superfluous material here, but I it's okay. It's Adamant. It's all right. But there's an all right album in there somewhere, I think, clamouring to get out.
Yeah. I would agree with that.
I'm quite taken aback by the mixture of styles as well, and the mixture of genres. We have in your mind, in one's mind, you sort of imagine Adamant to sound a particular way. Yeah. There may be one of those tracks somewhere. There's a couple of Graham Coxon tracks on here. There's a couple of Blur tracks. I think I heard a Nine Inch Nails track somewhere as well.
New Radicals, I heard hints of New Radicals. Even a bit of 70s kind of Bowie.
Yep, bit of Bowie in there as well. So there was every artist imaginable from the last 30, 40 years gets an appearance via Adamant. So if I'm going to pull out the single album, what is it? Well, it really does sag somewhere in the middle.
I would thought it'd be easy to pick out the things that are just not very good.
Not very good.
Darling Boy.
Darling Boy?
I think awful.
Hard Men, Tough Blokes
is awful.
Yeah.
Although if you take out the lyrics and vocals, it's a, you could almost say it's a typical Adamant.
Yeah.
And I think it might have been one that was co-written by Marco.
Okay.
And so it's got a great drum beat and great guitar riff, and then, oh my god, the lyrics are awful.
I actually found the first 3 tracks, actually varying in style as they did, were actually a good introduction to the album.
Yeah, because you've got the fun kind of bluesy thing, Cool Zombie, which starts off, which is derivative of various things, but is quite a decent track. And I say I quite like Stay in the Game.
Stay in the Game I liked. Yeah.
And even the kind of title track, Man and His Daughter, which kind of reminded me a bit of in the delivery, Ian Jury-esque.
Yeah. There you go, another one.
Yeah.
Tick.
And even the fine track, Vince Taylor, with its Bond hints, I thought was actually quite a decent track.
That was quite a decent track as well. Imagine the Bond theme on guitar done in a sort of 60s bluesy kind of style. 60s blues kind of style. There is some good stuff on there, and maybe it's the first few tracks really do grab your attention, and then I found that I just sort of drifted off as I do, and it was only later in the album where it kind of re-engages, but by then the sort of standard isn't quite as high as it was at the start.
Yeah, and I think if you're trying to listen to an album as well, you should say you've kind of lost interest, really, because it's not a short record.
No, it's not.
You are holding out for kind of, I suppose Vivian's Tears, I suppose, is where it starts turning back the right way, if you like.
Yeah.
And yes, it's you are thinking, would I really stick through it to get back to that?
No.
And yeah, I think this, as an album, I don't think this works.
No.
Which is obviously fine for this day and age, since most people don't really listen to stuff as albums.
No.
But with my old school hat on, it fails in that sense. But as you say, that there is enough okay stuff on it to, welcome him back, really.
Quite, yeah. So he's been on television and radio a lot, as well, the last couple of months, in fact. So obviously he's building a presence, and good luck to him.
And I'm sure he's still entertaining live.
Well, I'm sure he is. Yeah.
So, there you go, Jane.
Not for us, Jane. Thank you. So moving on.
Moving on to the Villagers.
Yeah.
Who I hadn't heard of.
Nope.
And this is actually quite embarrassing that we hadn't heard of them, because apparently their first album, Becoming a Jackal from 2010, was Mercury nominated.
Oh yes.
So that really passed us by.
No, that's passed me.
Yeah. It has to be said, we kind of test drove this album just at the weekend.
Yeah,
with a couple of additional
listeners.
Yeah. And they weren't that impressed.
No, which was more the pity, really, because I actually of the collection this month, I found this one of the stronger albums that we listened to.
Yeah, it's a kind of interesting record. It's kind of it's folky.
Yes.
At its heart, but it's kind of folky with a kind of Radiohead mentality.
Did you also notice that as an album, it begins quite quietly, and then as each track is added to the album, it's almost like another instrument is pulled out of a cupboard somewhere.
Yeah.
Until you get to the sort of the last couple of tracks where it is really just a free-for-all of everything that they've got and the kitchen sink.
Yeah, it does start off very sparsely.
It does start very sparsely, but it builds across the album. I really appreciated that.
Yeah, I thought it reminded me quite a bit, particularly the first few tracks of Low Anthem. And then you get the quite quirky Earthly Pleasure after that, which I found myself hearing bits of Ernie the Fastest Milkman in the West.
Oh no!
In just
Thanks
the way there, just the kind of delivery. And then you've got Waves, obviously, which again starts and then builds, and then has the kind of serious kind of Radiohead out guitars at the end, which particularly annoyed the girls at the weekend.
Yeah.
And there's a few other tracks that I quite liked. Obviously, you've got their Arcade Fire impersonation on Nothing Arrived, which is probably the best Arcade Fire song that Arcade Fire haven't recorded.
Yeah.
So showing they can be kind of almost poppy and commercial. In fact, I'm not sure if there's a single off this album, but that would be my pick to have as a single if I was releasing a single off its album.
And passing a message as well, actually, was in a similar vein.
Yeah. And then it kind of, I think, hangs together quite nicely, and it ends up with Rhythm Composer, which, as you say, is almost fitting in the way that the album's kind of built, with adding bits and bells and whistles and things, and as you go. So it's kind of quirky, is how
it has
I
a
would
dark side of the
describe it.
moon sort of fade out or freak out as well.
Yes.
Buried in there somewhere. Sort of mid-dark side of the moon.
Almost light side of the moon.
Yes.
Yeah, so I agree. I thought this was certainly a band that were interesting and certainly worth checking out. Whilst I'm sure the album won't appeal to everybody.
No.
And even bits and pieces of the album won't appeal to everybody. But I think the guy who's the main thrust behind it, whose name's Conor O'Brien, whose voice reminded me of Paul Simon on several of the tracks.
Certainly the opening track, My Lighthouse, could have been a Simon and Garfunkel tune.
But I also thought on Judgment Call and The Bell there are also kind of hints of that coming through. So yeah, I thought they were certainly a band to watch.
Yeah, I think if I was going to say, if you like Mumford and Sons,
the Grammy multi-year winning Mumford and Sons,
then
have been
you would like
cleaned
this.
up.
I actually think they're better than Mumford and Sons, but that's just my personal opinion.
Yeah, they're less commercial.
Yeah, certainly more interesting.
Yeah, they're less commercial, and apart from, I suppose, Nothing Arrived, less sing-along-able.
Yeah,
But
that's what keeps things interesting.
Yeah, and in fact, the sing-alongable aspect I will come back to on one of the other reviews that we'll get to shortly.
Sure.
So next up is a gentleman who's kind of appeared out of nowhere and been getting good press both this side of the Atlantic and the other side of the Atlantic. A gentleman by the name of Matthew E. White, and his debut album called Big Inner. And I was going to set up this. I liked he was interviewed, I think, in the Guardian a couple of weeks ago. Somebody kind of asked him to kind of describe what genre his music was, and his response was along the lines of, "Well, if I was a big black guy with a great voice, it would definitely be a soul album. But since I'm a big white guy with a quite crap voice, it's not really."
That's unfair. That's unfair in himself.
But I think I can see where he's coming from in his description of this album. It's again, that hesitant to use the word quirky, but it is kind of quirky. But it's another very mellow album that has hints of 70s kind of soul.
Yeah.
More than what would be termed R&B these days, and kind of kicks off with that kind of mellow folk feel on One of These Days.
Yeah.
And then totally changes tack. With the following song, Big Love, which is a big song. And I don't know about you, but I could hear Primal Scream doing it in my head.
Yeah.
It was that kind of thing. That kind of, sub-Stones, bluesy thing.
When this album wakes up, it does have that sort of very much sort of rhythm and blues feel to it. And I particularly like the track Hot Toddies, which comes towards the end of the album, which again sort of rocks out a little bit, but not too much.
Yes, in a kind of restrained kind of way.
Restrained kind of way. That's an interesting comment you picked out on the soulfulness of it. It is a very pleasant listen, this album. I found that my attention, again, God knows what's wrong with my attention span nowadays, but
that's children for you.
Yes, I think it is. Did tend to wander, but it's a very mellow listen.
Yeah, I was quite freaked out on the track "We Will Love You." No, "Will You Love Me?" Sorry, "We Will Love You." It sounds like "We Will Rock You." I'm going to go Queen moment. So this going to go. Partly because I couldn't stop myself singing the games people play along with it. The classic Joe South song has covered by virtually everybody, James Taylor and Tom Jones, and I think Lizzie did the most recent cover of it a couple of years ago. And the verse of it is pretty much note for note that song. So that caused a problem because I couldn't stop singing the wrong words to his song. But as you say, it does have that kind of 70s mellowness to it, and steady pace actually before Hot Toddies had that kind of Randy Newman type thing to it. And then bizarrely, you've got the last track where it kind of the end of it just kind of goes on about Jesus Christ is your friend.
Yes,
quite a lot.
Yeah.
Brazos, which is actually quite a good track, but it is quite bizarre.
It is quite a religious experience listening to that.
It is, as music should be,
evangelical almost.
Yeah. It's 7 tracks long as well.
Yeah, which we like.
Yeah. And pretty much comes in at about...
Take note, Mr. Ant.
Yeah, comes in at about 35 minutes, I think.
It's a very pleasant listen.
Yeah.
I'd recommend it.
Yeah, so would I. So we move... we certainly change musical stylings next for the Joy Formidable with their second album, I think it is, called Wolf's Law. Which of the albums we listened to, I think is the most immediate. In that it's an album that actually, has definite verses and choruses that are identifiable as verses and choruses.
Yeah.
Songs. Yes. Yes, what we call in the business. Yes, what we call in the business.
What we call in the business, songs.
Because of that, I really like this record actually.
Yeah.
The woman's voice reminds me a lot of Charlotte Hatherley,
Ash.
And it from the off, it kind of grabs you. The opening track, which I'm presuming is a kind of ode to warring window cleaners. The song's called
This Leather Is Ours.
This Leather Is Ours. And it's just just great catchy tune, and then it moves automatically into kind of Chola, which has a great riff. Foot tapping stuff. You got Bats, which is almost Smashing Pumpkins like.
Yeah.
You got a kind of acoustic ballad in the middle of it, silent treatment. Forest Serenade, which is another song that's
and in the middle of that, you've got the More song as well, which is just crazy.
And there's lots of fuzz and distortion going on the guitars and stuff like that. So it's that. Although it's interesting that if you find the hidden track Wolf's Law in the middle of the final track Turnaround, all the kind of fuzz goes, and you've got a very kind of stripped away
interesting
song, which was quite interesting to see how they sound without layering on the effects. But yes, I actually really enjoyed this record.
My problem with it is I don't know, with some of the other albums that we've reviewed in this session, I really felt I had to make the efforts to sort of appreciate them, and appreciate them I did. With this, because of its immediacy, I found that I was just kind of sort of tapping my foot and enjoying it, which is no bad thing.
No, I know what you mean.
But you know what I mean? It almost sort of in the middle somewhere. Again, in the middle. It sagged for me. I thought the opening was very strong. The More song, the reason I pulled that up a moment ago is that really grabbed my attention and brought me back into it again, even though it was all the loud distortion. I thought, what the hell is this? And, I sort of, thought it was, that kind of pulled me out of my stupor, listening to this one. It's a great album. As you say, it's good listening, it's easy listening. It's not easy listening, but it's easy listening.
Yes.
It rocks. It's got very strong female vocalists throughout, which is great. I actually found that the end of the album, beginning with The Leopard and the Lung,
I like that.
It enters an imperial sort of closing set.
Yes.
Which really sort of hangs together well. And I thought the closing of the album, rather like the opening of the album, is very strong indeed. So you have The Leopard and the Lung, the Hurdle, and finally the turnaround with the hidden piece in the middle. And I thought as an album close, it sort of brings it all together. All the various themes, all the various sounds, the lyrical stylings, it all comes together and presents what I thought was a very strong, almost a set within a set.
Yep.
With the close there and an epilogue. So I thought that was really good, very interesting. So again, maybe I sort of lost in the middle of it and pulled it back again. It's a good album.
Yeah, I'd agree, and it actually makes me want to check out their first album, which I totally overlooked as well. Was aware of, was one of those ones I kind of thought, I'll get around to it at some point, and never actually did. Yeah.
Remind me of someone else that I can't really put my finger on, so I'm not going to mention.
Just filling your own blank there.
I feel we've been here before.
Well, yes, the sound is derivative of several people.
Several people we've reviewed the last year or two, but yeah, it's all right. You know.
So we finish up with Dutch Uncles. Out of Touch in the Wild is their album, and another interesting band. I feel, and definitely a band who are, I suppose, inspired by 80s pop, I would say.
Yes.
And also inspired by having very strange song titles.
All one-word song titles, apart from one of them. Which could be one word, depending on how you say it.
But song titles such as Pondage, Fester,
Godboy,
Zugzwang, Fiedra.
I was trying to describe this band to someone earlier, and
look at that one.
I found it quite an easy point of reference. Hot Chip.
Interesting.
The vocalist, he sounds a lot like one of the guys from Hot Chip, and certainly the way the songs were constructed and the use of the keyboards and instruments could be Hot Chip-esque. What distinguishes it is, you've already mentioned that sort of love of mid to late 80s American pop music, plus the use of a string quartet, which you don't notice. It's an insidious thing because it's there the whole time, but you only realise about halfway through. You think, that string quartet's still playing. This is that's quite good though. That the way that they've done that, they sort of incorporate it. It's almost like the fifth instrument.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Yeah. And yeah, it's as you say, the thing, the 80s thing was the thing that stuck out for me, and and not just the American stuff, but even from the UK point of view, there were hints of Talk Again, Sparks, Level 42. Yeah. Obviously, there were hints of Yesayer.
Yes, very much so.
Who themselves obviously were influenced by that kind of whole period. My problem, if I have a problem with this album, is that I think they're a band that are a handful of catchy choruses away from being mega. Yeah. But they seem to be trying to avoid choruses for a lot of this album. Which is not to say there aren't choruses. I mean, I think Fester has a decent chorus with its kind of xylophone action reminiscent of Driving in My Car with Madness, I kind of thought. And I think Zugzwang, I think, also has, and Flexin are also quite poppy, and could be hits. Yeah. This is another album, like one you mentioned earlier on, where towards the end it kind of almost kind of builds up as, again, like they're kind of throwing everything in, and gets a bit kind of prog rock towards the end. Yeah. Its final two tracks, when they're thinking, let's just throw a bit of that in, throw a bit of this in, and see where it goes, kind of thing. So again, a bit like Villagers, I found myself being interested in the band in a way that I'll be interested for both bands on where they go next and what the next albums are going to be like.
Really good, amazing. You've picked that up of this set this time round. Those are the two bands that I'm intrigued by. And those are the two bands that I have gone back and listened to multiple times, because I just felt that there was something there. There was a quality there that if channeled in the right kind of way, could result in some very interesting music indeed.
Yeah, I would not disagree.
No, blimey.
There we go again.
There we go again. And you start going about the Joy Formidable. I thought, oh no, I don't like this. Don't like this as much.
Well, I guess that's it.
It's a tough one to call it.
Yeah, it is. It's easier to it's feeling sad to say. I think the Adamant album is the worst album of the 5.
Yeah. Yes.
But it might have been less worse if it had been shorter.
Yeah. It's probably unfair. I think this is one of those podcasts where it was all kind of good.
Yeah.
Even the Adamant stuff, which wasn't that good, was all right. But certainly the villagers and Dutch uncles, I get my tip this time.
But if you want some just pure popness, then I would stick on the Joy Formidable.
Oh, okay. Good.
So that's it. And obviously, we were going to do 6, but Spotify.
We didn't.
and also, I could have been really cruel and thrown in the new My Bloody Valentine album for you, but you came to a gig with me. That's enough.
Yeah, my ears. The trouble with my ears started then, I think.
But for those who are interested, the new My Bloody Valentine album is okay.
Okay. Good.
It's not brilliant. It's not awful. It's okay.
Okay. Good.
So that's it for now. Next time, I don't know what we're doing next time. Maybe the Eels, maybe Richard Thompson.
We've got some big names coming up in the next month or so.
We have got some people in the next few months, actually. We'll be
some big returners this year.
Yeah, it's going to get a bit commercial probably in the next thing,
Because this really wasn't that commercial, was it?
No.
So we tick.
Yes. Yes, most people listening won't have heard of, apart from Adamant, probably won't have heard of any of these bands.
No, that's a good thing. That's why we're here. We're providing a service.
Yes.
Or even a service.
Now we're going to provide a service down to the pub.
Alright, see you then.
Check out our website at cttbmusic.co.uk. Also, follow us on Twitter at cttbmusic. The CTTB Music Podcast is a Vineland production.